Hey guys, it's Emma. I wanted to share with you a basic rundown of how I use Procreate to illustrate. Today I want to specifically show you how I draw people. To start off with supplies, this is an 8th generation iPad and an Apple Pencil. I have a stand that my iPad is sitting on, which I do recommend having to eliminate neck pain. On the iPad, I have a paper-like screen protector. I prefer these to other screen protectors because it reduces glare and it also prevents fingerprints. Procreate does come with a huge number of brushes, but I have bought a few brush packs. The one that I primarily use for everything is the Ultimate Illustration brush pack from Genevieve's Design Studio. I will leave a link in my description below if you're interested in purchasing it. I will be using this brush pack for the illustration, but you can still imitate the way that I illustrate with any brush that you prefer. To start off, I always find a reference picture for my art, especially for people, because I'm not an expert on human figures and they probably would look a little wacky if I didn't have a reference. I like to find most of my photos on Pinterest. For this picture in particular, I looked up Spring Girl. So I usually put my reference photo up here in the corner so I can still see my canvas while looking at the reference. Then I start to sketch. For sketching, I usually use the sketching brush, which is in the brush pack I purchased. I always make the brush a pretty dark gray color. And then for size, it's kind of up to you. I usually do a pretty small size. And then when sketching, I usually try to draw the head first, and then from there I'll add the shoulders and then all the other details. When I'm finished with my sketch, then I go into my layers and I'm going to select this N right here, and then I always go up to multiply, and then I'm going to lower the opacity. I like to have mine around 30. I think that's light enough for me. And then what I do after that is add another layer, put that layer underneath your first layer. If you do like to rename your layers, then you can rename this layer 1 to sketch to keep yourself organized, but I personally do not do that because I am lazy. So you have this second layer underneath your sketch layer, and this is going to be where we start adding color. For the base drawing, I do like to use the outlines brush. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and draw in all of my base colors. Okay, once you're finished with your base layer colors, then we get to get started on my favorite part, which is detailing. I always close out the reference picture because I feel like it's in my way. My favorite thing in Procreate is clipping masks. So what I do, we'll start with the face first. I'll add a layer above this layer, and then you can click on it and select clipping mask, and then that layer is connected to this layer. So if I'm drawing, it's not gonna go off the layer onto the canvas, which is amazing. So the first thing I like to do is do the blush on the face. So for blush, I use a pink color. I'll use something similar to this. Maybe a little bit lighter. And then I usually use the shader brush. Adjust the size. And then I'll just do kind of a circular shape, and I'll do that on both cheeks. And then one of my favorite brushes that's part of this pack is the freckles brush. So I always do this because I'm obsessed with freckles, but click on the freckles brush, and then I usually do kind of a dark brown, and I'll start putting freckles on the face. Usually I'll do it on the cheeks, and then I'll do a little bit up on the bridge of the nose. I have to adjust the size. I don't even have freckles myself, but I'm obsessed with them. And then usually for the freckles, I like to go to multiply, and then I'll lower the opacity until I think it looks good. So I think that looks great. Love them. And then the next layer that I also do attached to the skin color is going to be the shadows. So for the shadows, I select the skin color and then I'll go to a pretty dark brown. And then anywhere, I use the outline brush for this, and then anywhere that I think has shadows is where I'll add lines. So usually underneath the eyebrows, I always do a line. You know, I have shadows under my eyebrows. And then around the hairline, I like to always do that as well. And then under the neck is a really important one, so I'll round around the chin. From here, I always select the N, go up to multiply, and then the same thing, you're gonna lower the opacity till you think it looks good. Say 16% looks good to me. And then that's kind of like, so you have the texture on the skin. I'll show you without the sketch, then you can see that you can still tell where the fingers are, the neck and everything without adding any harsh lining. Okay, so for the eyebrows and the hair, I used the same type of technique I used for the skin. So we're going to work on the hat now, and the hat's a little bit different than the other objects we worked on, just texture wise. So I'm going to add a clipping mask to that, and then select the color of the hat, lower or get a darker color. We're going to go into my brush pack again and select the shader. I like to use a pretty big brush size for this. And then very lightly, you're gonna shade where the hat would be darker, so like around the head. Like that. And then we're going to go in, multiply, and lower the opacity. All right, and then the next layer is adding texture. So because this is like a straw hat, it has a lot of like marks going around in the circles. So what I do for this is I'll actually draw those circles myself. They don't have to be perfect, but so I'll go to the outlines brush, make it pretty small, not super small, but I feel like there's also lines kind of going up and down as well, so I'm going to do that too. Very lightly because I don't want it to be super defined. And then once again, go into the layers, select multiply, and then lower the opacity. Moving on to the dress, add a clipping mask to that, and then we're gonna have the same kind of process we had with the skin, where you're going to get the darker color and add the shadows. Lots of times for the shadows, I'll also use the shader brush on the clothes. And I'll put that like underneath the hair, anywhere where it should probably be a little bit darker. And then I'll do it towards the bottom of the dress as well. This isn't, I mean, it's for shadows, but it's a lot for texture. And then go down, multiply again, and then lower the opacity. I do want to add a design to the dress, so I'm going to put that underneath the shadow layer so that the design is also in the shadows. So I'll add a layer there, and then I think what I'm gonna do, because it's almost Valentine's Day, I'm gonna add some hearts. I think the dress is a little boring, so I'm gonna add some ruffles, but I need the ruffles to be on top of the skin layer, so I'm just gonna add a layer above that. Okay, so back to the heart layer. Sometimes I'll experiment with this. You can kind of go through all of these, see what each selection does to the color and see if maybe you like one of those colors a little better. So like maybe the screen selection looks kind of nice, and then you can like lower the opacity and see if maybe you like that better. So the hearts are a little more subtle than they would be if they were a darker color, which I kind of prefer. Okay, I think I'm happy with the dress, so I think we're gonna move on to highlights now. So for highlights, you're gonna add a new layer to whatever you want highlights on. So let's first do the hat. So you're gonna add a layer, clipping mask on top of that. And then I just use white for all of my highlights. I like to use the shader selection. And then let's just kind of go around the top of the hat. And maybe the part that goes kind of right over the head a little bit. And then we're gonna push on this end, and my favorite highlight selection is overlay. So we're gonna go to overlay and then lower the opacity. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing for the dress. And then I think we need to do it for the ruffles on the dress, so we're gonna add a layer to that as well. Okay, now we're gonna add highlights to the hair. And then we're gonna add highlights to the flowers. We're gonna select this layer, press that in, go down to overlay, and then I just barely lower the opacity on this one because I really like the pretty harsh highlights. And I think I want to add some more highlights to the hair, but I'm going to do them with the outline brush. They're a little more defined. Another good place to have highlights is also on the skin. For the skin, I'll go to the smudge tool and start kind of smudging the highlights a bit to make them not quite as harsh. Alright, and then sometimes I kind of like a little extra texture, so I think I'm going to add some more texture to the hat. I'm just going to add another clipping mask, and then select the color, maybe get a darker color. And then there's these 3 different types of textures that come with this brush pack. The one that I like the best is this texture 1, which is just kind of like a huge amount of little specks. So I'll get that one, and then select the size, and then I'll just slightly go over it. Because it is like a texture, you can actually kind of press down a little harder with your pen and make it more collected around where you want the shadows to be. So I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna change this one to multiply and then lower the opacity. All right, so we're kind of reaching the home stretch here. So for my art in particular, I like to have a like a square usually behind the person. So I'm gonna add a new layer, and I'm gonna have that be the very bottom layer. For this, I usually do a pretty light green, just whatever goes best with my current art. And then I'm gonna do the outlines and make it pretty big, and I'm just gonna start drawing a square. Alright, and then I like to add a little texture to this layer as well, so I'm going to add a clipping mask to it, have a darker green, and then I'm going to just start adding these kind of like swirly designs on the back. I'm going to select this layer and I'm going to multiply it and then lower the opacity. So it's not very apparent that there's a design on this back part, I just want a little bit of texture going on. Now I'm going to add a layer on top of everything. It's going to be white, and this is when I add like my little sparkles and dot. So for these last couple of steps, something else I like to do is add a layer on top of everything, have it white, and then for brushes, I go to this Ultimate Watercolor pack, which I also bought from Genevieve's design studio, so if anyone's interested in that, it's the watercolor pack. I love this splatters brush to use at the end of my drawings just to add some little textures. And then I'll go select this layer and I'll change this part to add. I think it's pretty. And then we're gonna add another layer on top of that. And this is like my last layer. and I'm gonna select a pretty light brown color. And then we're gonna go in here. This is actually a brush that comes with Procreate, so it's under sketching, and it's gonna be this soft pastel brush, and I usually try to make it pretty big actually, and you're just gonna very lightly go over the whole entire canvas. So then you're gonna push this in, and I like to go to subtract, and then lower the opacity a little bit. Then of course you have to add your signature. Alright, and I think that's it. So hopefully this tutorial was helpful for you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.